I was inspired by Duke Nukem, as I often am. He pointed me to an article that I'd sort of seen but sort of missed. And basically it started out with this kid who you sort of immediately dislike, and that's the sort of twist at the start. So that this is the setup. You got this bloke tweeting saying, "Oh, it's crazy. One of my friends said I wasn't a Bristolian today. I've lived here for 3 years after moving from Brighton." And
it's always Brighton, isn't it?
People were like, "Oh, no, if you live here, you're Bristolian." And I was like, "No, I don't think you are." But then my mind changed. But you entered the scene at this point.
No. Tell me why your mind changed, and then I'll see.
Well,
just all right. I'll lay it out first.
You take a step. I'll take a step.
All right. I think that's a rubbish. We haven't had this conversation offline, off air. We had
in meat space.
We had a couple of minutes of it. It got heated, and we said we'll save it for the show. So this could go awfully wrong. Or you might convince me, or I might convince you.
Right.
Yeah, I just think that's rubbish.
I'm convinced. That's that done and dusted.
There you go. Go on. Next point. Don't worry, listeners. I've prepared notes.
Oh, here we go. It's bloody Baudrillard or whatever going on again, is it? I think, first of all, because I was like, nah. Because the big thing is, I'm not a Bristolian.
No, you're not.
Because I'm a Wiltshireman, very proud, but I've lived in Bristol for most of my adult life, and I would say that Bristol has formed me as an adult more than any other place, right? This is the sort of the weird, and Magsy and Crossing the Danny and other people were chipping in and saying, no, you can't call yourself Bristolian unless you were born and raised here, because that's what Bristolian means. There's no prejudice involved in that or anything like that. But if you say someone is a Bristolian, you mean that they were born and raised in Bristol. So I'm a Wiltshireman because I was born and raised in Wiltshire. But this is the twist for me, Hitchcockian twists.
Here we go.
If someone says, like when I'm in Italy, if someone says, where are you from? I'll say Bristol, because I'm from Bristol now, because I've lived here for 25 years. And the other thing is, when someone sort of says 28% of support Bristol Rovers and 2% of support Bristol City, what's the word that you put in there? You don't say people who live in Bristol at the moment, you say Bristolians, and by that definition you mean the people who are resident in Bristol at the moment. So it's a contested cultural term.
Yeah, it's not.
Nice try, yeah.
So I noticed this recently in the Evening Post, Bristol Live, Malarkey, whatever it is. I've only noticed this recently. It feels like a more recent thing. This is a more recent thing that they have referred to Bristolians. I don't think that organisations would go, oh, this many Bristolians support this, whereas this many Bristolians
what
support
would they say
that.
then?
People who live in Bristol. That's what these reports and things like that say.
So 8% of people who live in Bristol, not Bristolians.
Yeah, there's a difference.
And the difference is you've got to be born and raised here.
Yeah.
So how about if you came here at the age of 7?
Depends where
Oh, see?
Well, the difference is that your formative years are here, aren't they, if you're 7? But actually, I met a guy the other day who came here when he was 3.
Yeah.
And he was born in London, and he sounds Bristolian. He said he's a Londoner, like. So
that's reverse weird, because he's not.
Well, he did. Well, I say he sounds Bristolian. I thought he sounded like a Londoner. My missus thought he sounded Bristolian.
Right.
So that's maybe the difference. But what this is...
Yeah.
I'm telling you what this is.
Go for it.
From the first show, we defined gentrification as a process of spatial, economic and social restructuring, and that's all this is.
So it's a cultural appropriation from Bristolians.
It's trying to restructure something and consume it to gain authenticity.
Right. But my sort of definition wouldn't be calling yourself Bristolian.
No, but
it would be
you're
speaking with a Bristol accent if you haven't got one. That would be sort of...
Well, so your first thing about measuring people who live in Bristol as Bristolians,
yeah,
is just a positivist approach of looking and going, this is that, without any of the nuances or the loadedness of what that term means. Like when people talk about Bristolians in this city, there's all these little signifiers that go along with that. They don't mean people in Clifton. When people talk about Bristolians, Nobody goes to someone in Clifton, oh yeah, you're really Bristol, you're proper Bristol, aren't you? Do you know what I mean? That doesn't happen, does it?
I'm proper bloody Bristol.
Yeah, that doesn't
proper
happen.
West Bristol.
And so what that means is clearly situated within that term, Bristolian, is all this other stuff that's going on. It's not just this, oh, they're just words, we can just use them as anything anymore, you know.
But that means it's subject, by definition, it's subjective, not objective. Have I got that right the right way round?
I don't know, you use the words.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, I think you're right. Subjective.
So basically, it's your definition is only true for you, because I could ask 20 other Bristolians and get 20 different answers.
No, because although, so what you're saying is they're socially constructed, like.
But also, there's no common agreement as to what a Bristolian is.
I'd think that. So I suppose you could look at it differently. You could ask people what their definition is, and then you could look at how the word is used.
Right.
And somewhere in the middle, oh, hang on, I've knocked the mic. Somewhere in the middle is probably the truth, isn't there? If anyone out there wants to do some sort of qualitative research, that's probably a good way to go about it.
That sounds like centrist liberal nonsense, that does.
Well, it's looking at representation as well as interpretation.
I think, basically, it depends on the person, right? So if I said, I'm a Bristolian, I come from down the road, figuratively, I've lived here a long time, I don't think anyone would really call me out, you know, like, until I sort of said, oh, I only moved here when I was, whatever it was, 25, and then people say, oh, you're not Bristolian then, you know, like, but if someone who is obviously fresh off the train from Paddington, it's like, yeah, I'm a Bristolian now, you know, like, I'm a property owner here, and I pay taxes here, then part of me is like, well, that could be a definition, because there's obviously a sort of a racist aspect to it that neither of us agree with, but could be saying, okay, well, if you're a migrant to the city from abroad or whatever, you can't be part of this city. You're not a Bristolian.
I think, well,
there are some people who would say that.
Yeah, so that I imagine there is a racialized element to how being Bristolian is represented. But like, take accent, which is usually like a clear signifier. Like loads of kiddies of different ethnicities whose parents or grandparents were from Bangladesh or from the Caribbean, all had Bristolian accents. Like,
well, I mean, they could be
Tricky. I imagine his parents came from abroad. One of his parents, like, you know, Grant from Massive Attack, both of them have Bristolian accents.
Yeah.
Like, you know,
well,
so
most people you meet do. You know, like Arthur St Paul's has got one more than Arthur St Paul's has got a.
But just
Bristolian
back to your other point about the person who's just off the train and you, the difference. It's not that there's some sort of temporal. Basically today I've read a few books before I come out, so it's reminding me of words, like, you know, but it's not that there's this temporal limit to being Bristolian, that this person's only been here. That's not why people would out you for saying it, because what you specifically do is pass in the eyes of other people because you have a West Country accent.
Right.
It's that people will hear the twang and go, oh, well, maybe he's from, like, he sounds a bit like he's from Bristol, like, and that's...
The Bristolians would know that I haven't got a Bristol accent. I got a West Country, well, a Wiltshire accent.
I
got a mix.
I don't think they would, because the other thing about Bristol, and why you can't necessarily limit it to accent, is because there's been so much migration here from outside of the UK, but also from inside of the UK, that the accent in different areas has changed. There is not estuary English, but London isms that come in, London twangs that come into aspects of the English, which are particularly young people like. There's a thing,
and also
the fact that people don't use the Bristol L as much anymore because they were getting shamed into using it. People still use it. I know
it's
people
an
who still use it.
Mostly when I hear, apart from older people or proper, like, you know,
proper Bristol.
Proper.
Was that people from Clifton? Is it?
No, exactly. You know, like, because I think it's interesting because there's things about it. Basically, I don't like this idea of like, oh, I'm third generation Bristol or something like that. It's just, well, that just means that your family moved here 4 generations ago. You know, like, that doesn't mean anything to me. You know, like,
just 11 generations over.
11, right?
Properly, my granddad, he told me, he knows. What do you call it? A tree thing when they look at your thing.
Tree of life.
I don't know. That's on me mother's side. On me father's side, they're from away.
Exactly, innit? So
they're from away. And do you know what? I don't think he would say he was a Bristolian.
I wouldn't say your dad was a Bristolian by any stretch.
But he's lived here longer than he's lived up north, right?
Yeah, that's the thing. I suppose, like we said, I think we've established it's not a controversial term, but it's a contortable term in that it doesn't. There's no set definition of Bristolian. You would think that the set definition of Bristolian would be you were born and raised here, right? But I don't think that's true because, like you said, people could come here when they were 4 or 5 and still be classed as Bristolian if they stayed here for another 20 years or whatever.
But the reason I get aggy, I was at a thing the other day, I got aggy and basically shot myself in the foot instead of being calm. So I'm trying to use a big word and instead of using me words and being calm, I just flew off the handle and completely got into this argument that was easily winnable. Like,
right.
But, so.
You twat.
So, for me, because.
Well, answer this one thing. What's the point in still using it?
Well, different people would use it for different reasons. Personally, I use it to undermine people because I'm a neghead. because identities are important, some people would say, as part of my what do you call it? Biographical narrative, like so who I see myself am. I talk about being a Bristolian. Other Bristolians might not say that, like, you know.
Right.
But for me, it is important. Why do you call yourself a Wiltshireman? Like,
because it's important to me. Yeah, exactly. I mean, like I.
So if on the other foot, if people were in Wiltshire, if all these people from Brighton moved down to Wiltshire, was buying up buying up your houses, getting the middle class jobs above you, like.
They've been doing that for 30 years.
And then they started going, oh yeah, and we're proper Wiltshire.
Mate, we lost Reading, you know, like the way that America lost Detroit, we lost Reading, you know, like Reading people used to talk like I do, you know, like now Reading talk with Cockney accents, and that's going further west, and Wiltshire is now the sort of battleground, but it's sort of, because there's been so many people have moved to the little market towns that I'm from, that use it then to commute to London, to Bath, to Bristol, and so it's had a huge effect, you know, like, everywhere's high streets are dying, but the market town high streets are, you know, look at the stuff that Fazia Shaheen does with class, you know, like sort of it's on the money stuff, especially as if the left is going to make any kind of headway, it needs to come up with a narrative, an ideology that doesn't just fit the city, it fits the town and the country. Yeah. And I think identity is sort of wrapped up in that, and that's why it's so interesting. The only reason we're talking about this is because it's interesting, isn't it? To us, probably no one else, but. And so, yeah, I think that I can see what you're saying totally. And maybe if I was born and raised in Bristol, it might be more important to me. But the only reason that I make a big thing about being from Wiltshire is for years I denied it. You know, like when I moved away, people would take the piss out of me for my accent. When I went to work as a barman in an army camp with loads of Geordies and people like that, they would absolutely crucify me and call me stupid, and so I always had a chip on my shoulder about that. And it was only the last 5 years that I sort of, because Bristol was a metropolitan identity, so it was a bit cooler, but to be from Wiltshire, there's nothing cool about that at all, and it's actually a really negative thing. So,
but that's the point, isn't it? So that's like minimum twice a week, maximum every day. Where I work in a shop, somebody makes comment about my accent. What that you've got an accent? Either making a comment or repeating what I say back to them in a Bristolian accent. Yeah. I went out for a fag. 2 customers were asking me to say words in Bristolian accents.
Oh my God.
And so, and like that doesn't massively bother me or anything like that. But to me, you know, you look at that everyday experience when engaging with people who are moving it, you know, as well as representations in the media. So what we've talked about a million times before, but that show Skins, that was based in Bristol. All the cool young sexy people on there had London accents, and all the losers and bullies still all had Bristolian accents. Like, you know, that like Little Britain, it's all like for them, for people to consume it and go, oh yeah, I'm Bristolian now. Yeah. But at the same time, it's like, what? So like we get represented badly. People move here, mug us off, like, and now we can't even be calling ourselves Bristolian, like, because like they're having everything.
I can see. I'm half convinced, basically.
Like this, like what I'm saying is is not nuanced. Like this isn't necessarily what I think about everyone who's moving or anything like that. This is painting with a thick brush, like, you know.
Right, yeah.
So it doesn't mean it applies to everyone and all this sort of stuff. It's just like...
Well, we're talking
Yeah.
specifically about people using the term Bristolian, and obviously we've gone into a lot of other things. with
Yeah.
that.